Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Mercer. I'm 33 years old. My mother humiliated me at my own baby shower. And by the time my brother finished laughing across the room, I opened my banking app and saw the notification that made my hands go cold. Our joint account had been frozen. Not declined. Not pending. Frozen. And the worst part was, my mother looked at my face and smiled like she already knew. I was 7 months pregnant, standing in the rented back room of a little Italian restaurant in Ohio, wearing a pale blue dress that my husband Grant said made me look like Sunday morning. There were paper clouds hanging from the ceiling, white tulips on every table, a cake with tiny fondant baby shoes. My best friend, Elise, had spent 2 weeks making sure everything felt soft and peaceful because she knew my pregnancy had been hard. High blood pressure, no sleep, a baby who kicked like he was trying to escape through my ribs, and a family that treated me like I was both too sensitive and never doing enough. My mother, Donna Mercer, arrived late in a cream pantsuit, carrying no gift, just a shiny beige purse and the expression she wore whenever she wanted everyone to know she had opinions. Behind her came my older brother, Brandon Mercer, with his wife Kelsey, and their 2 boys. Brandon hugged me with one arm while checking the buffet table over my shoulder. "Nice spread," he said. "Grant paying, or did Mom finally loosen the leash?" I laughed because that's what you do when someone insults you in front of balloons. Grant didn't laugh. He just put his hand on my lower back. My mother kissed the air beside my cheek and whispered, "You look tired." But motherhood does that. Then, loud enough for the closest table to hear, she said, "Don't worry, everyone. Natalie has always been dramatic about discomfort." A few people chuckled politely. That was how it always started with her. A little jab wrapped in a joke. A public correction disguised as concern. If I reacted, I was unstable. If I stayed quiet, she got braver. For the first hour, I told myself not to let her ruin it. I opened tiny onesies. I smiled at bottles and blankets and pacifiers. I held up a handmade quilt from Elise's grandmother and actually cried, because someone had spent time on my baby without wanting applause for it. Then my mother stood up. Not during a toast, not when anyone asked her to speak. She just tapped her fork against her water glass until the room quieted. "Oh, I'll be quick," she said, beaming. "I just want to say something as the grandmother." I felt my stomach tighten. Grant leaned toward me. "Do you want me to stop this?" I shook my head because part of me still believed she might be kind. That is the humiliating truth. Even at 33, pregnant with my first child, I still hoped my mother might choose tenderness if enough people were watching. She didn't. Donna lifted her glass and looked around the room like she was hosting a gala. "Well, I have to admit, I never thought I'd see the day Natalie became a mother," she said. She could barely keep a goldfish alive in middle school. Laughter scattered through the room. My face warmed. She continued, "But here we are. Life surprises us. And luckily, she has Grant. He's very organized, very patient, very financially steady." That last phrase landed strangely. I glanced at Grant. My mother smiled wider. "Because our Natalie has never been great with money," she said. Bless her heart, when she was younger, she used to call me crying over overdraft fees. That was a lie. I had called her once in college because my debit card had been skimmed at a gas station, and she had turned it into a family legend where I was helpless and irresponsible. Brandon laughed from the other side of the room, mouth full of stuffed mushroom.
"Remember when she lost her rent money?"
he called out. I turned toward him. "I didn't lose rent money," I said. He raised both hands like I was proving his point. "See? Still touchy." More laughter. Not everyone. Elise wasn't laughing. Grant wasn't laughing. My coworker Maya looked down at her plate like she wanted to disappear for me. But enough people laughed. Enough. My mother tilted her head with that little smirk I hated. "Oh, honey, don't be embarrassed. Family secrets are what make these showers fun." Family secrets. That phrase stung because in our family, secrets only meant my mistakes. Brandon's DUIs were rough patches. His unpaid loans were bad timing. His screaming matches with Kelsey were stress. But me? I was the cautionary tale. Even when the facts weren't true. My mother reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. My throat went dry. "I brought something special," she said. "A little memory." She slid out a printed photo of me at 19, crying on the front steps of our old house, wearing a college hoodie and holding a laundry basket. I knew that day instantly. I had come home after my roommate stole my textbooks and my laptop. I was exhausted. I'd asked my mother if I could stay one weekend. She took a picture. I never knew why. Until my baby shower. She held it up like a prop. "This," she announced, "was Natalie learning that adulthood is hard." Brandon slapped the table. "Classic Nat." Something inside me went very still. The room blurred at the edges, but not because I was weak. Because I was finally seeing the shape of it. My mother had not come to celebrate my son. She had come to remind everyone that I was beneath her. Beneath Brandon. Beneath the version of myself she needed the world to believe in. Grant stood. "Donna, sit down," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room. My mother blinked, offended. "Excuse me?" I said, "Sit down." The silence after that was different. Heavy. Adult. Dangerous. Brandon pushed his chair back. "Don't talk to our mother like that." Grant looked at him. "Then maybe your mother should stop humiliating my wife at her own shower." My mother's face hardened, and for 1 second, the charming grandmother mask dropped. There she was. The woman who could turn love into debt. She looked directly at me and said, "I'm the reason she has anything to celebrate today." I knew what she meant. The joint account. 3 years earlier, after my father died, my mother begged me to add her to a savings account, just temporarily. She said she was overwhelmed handling utilities, funeral bills, estate costs. Brandon was too busy, and I was the responsible one. So I helped. At first, it was small. I paid the mortgage gap on her house when insurance delayed. I covered medication, repairs, groceries. Grant warned me to separate everything, but I kept saying, "She's my mom." The joint account became a holding place for family expenses. Then for my mother's emergencies. Then for Brandon's emergencies. Then, somehow, for everyone except me. I had been quietly moving my money out for months, slowly, carefully, because I was tired of waking up to texts that said, "Your brother needs help again," or "Don't make me ask twice." But I hadn't finished. And my mother knew it. At the shower, while everyone sat frozen around their lemonades and gift bags, my phone buzzed against the table. One buzz. Then another. I picked it up with shaking fingers. A banking alert. Then a second one. Then a red banner across the app. Account access restricted. Contact your financial institution. My heart pounded so hard the baby kicked. I tapped into the details. Joint savings. Frozen pending review. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering uselessly. Grant leaned in. "Natalie?" I couldn't answer, because right beneath the freeze notice was a note from the bank's secure message center. "A joint owner has reported unauthorized activity." I looked up slowly. Across the room, my mother was still standing beside the cake, envelope in one hand, wine glass in the other. And she was watching me. Not confused. Not worried. Watching. Brandon's grin faded just enough for me to know he was part of it. My mother lowered her voice, but the whole room heard her. "Maybe now you'll stop acting like you don't need your family." That was the moment the baby shower stopped being a party and became evidence. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice shifting in someone's glass. My phone was still open in my hand, the red warning bright enough to reflect against my thumbnail. Account access restricted. A joint owner has reported unauthorized activity. My mother set the photo of me crying at 19 on the gift table, like she had just completed a magic trick. Grant reached for my phone. "Let me see." I handed it to him without speaking. His jaw tightened as he read the message. Then he looked at my mother with a kind of calm that scared me more than yelling would have. What did you do? Donna gave a delicate little laugh. I protected myself. From what? I asked. My voice cracked on the last word. And I hated that. I hated giving her the satisfaction. She lifted her chin. From you emptying a family account. It's not a family account, Grant said. It's Natalie's savings account with your name added for convenience. Brandon snorted. Convenient how she's been draining it lately? I turned toward him. Draining it? You mean moving my paychecks and my savings into an account you can't touch? His face flushed. That told me enough. For months, I'd been documenting every transfer, every loan to Brandon, every bill my mother had guilted me into paying, every text message where she said, "You owe me for raising you," or "Family money stays in the family." But documentation didn't change the fact that my funds were now trapped. The baby kicked again, hard. I pressed one hand to my stomach. Elise appeared beside me. Nat, sit down. I'm fine, I whispered. You're not. She was right. My ears were ringing. My ankles throbbed. My heart felt like it was punching the inside of my ribs. Grant put an arm around me. We're leaving. My mother's eyes narrowed. That's it? You're going to storm out because I told the truth? No, I said, surprising myself. Everyone looked at me. I took a breath, slow and shaky. I'm leaving because you planned this. You waited until I was surrounded by people I care about, at a party for my baby, and you tried to humiliate me into obedience. Donna's mouth tightened. And when that wasn't enough, I continued, holding up the phone, you tried to freeze money you know I need before maternity leave. A few guests murmured. My mother's face shifted instantly, from smug to wounded. It was impressive, honestly, like watching someone change masks without using their hands. Oh, listen to her, she said softly. Making me the villain. No one talks about the stress I'm under. No one talks about how your father left me with confusion and paperwork and bills. My father died 4 years ago, I said, and grief has no timeline. Neither does theft, apparently, Grant snapped. Brandon stood up fully then. Watch your mouth. Grant stepped away from me just enough to face him. Or what? Kelsey grabbed Brandon's sleeve. Don't. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. Then my mother pointed at me. This is exactly what I mean. She turns people against each other. She always has. Even as a child, Natalie was difficult, sensitive, secretive. That word hit a nerve. Secretive. Because the biggest secret, all at once, he wasn't laughing anymore. I wasn't ready to say it. Not yet. Not in front of Grant's aunties and my coworkers, and Elise's grandmother, who had made the quilt with tiny yellow stars. But my mother had taught me something that day. Public shame only works if the target stays silent. So I picked up my purse, tucked my phone inside, and looked at the guests. I'm sorry this happened, I said. Thank you for coming for my son. I wish this had stayed about him. Maya stood immediately. Do you need a ride? Elise said, I'm coming with you. Grant took the gift bags from my chair, but I touched his arm. Leave them, his eyes met mine. Nat, leave them. I couldn't carry another thing my mother had touched. As we walked toward the door, my mother called after me, You'll regret making me your enemy. That stopped me, not because it frightened me, because she had finally said the quiet part out loud. I turned back. You were never supposed to be my enemy, I said. You were supposed to be my mother. Then I walked out. Outside, the late afternoon sun was sharp and cold. I made it 3 steps past the restaurant door before my knees buckled. Grant caught me. Elise was already crying. We need to call your doctor. I need to call the bank, I said. No, Grant said firmly. First doctor, then bank. That was Grant. Order in a crisis. He drove me straight to the hospital's labor and delivery triage. My blood pressure was high enough that the nurse's face changed when she saw the reading. They put monitors around my belly, took blood, asked if I had a headache, blurred vision, pain under my ribs. I answered like a robot. All I could think about was the account. Not because money mattered more than my baby. because money was how my mother kept people close. She didn't hug. She obligated. She didn't apologize. She invoiced, and now she had used a bank alert as a leash. 2 hours later, the baby's heartbeat was steady, my labs were okay, and the doctor told me I needed rest, hydration, and less stress. Grant gave a humorless laugh. When we got home, I sat on the edge of our bed while he called the bank on speaker. The representative was polite, but careful. "Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Hale, the account has been restricted after a claim of unauthorized withdrawals by one joint owner." Grant said, "My wife is the primary funder of the account. Her mother was added as a joint owner years ago." "I understand. Unfortunately, because both parties have ownership rights, we cannot release funds while the review is active." "How long?" "Typically 10 to 30 business days." My stomach dropped. 30 business days. I had medical bills coming. Maternity leave starting soon. A nursery still half finished because I'd been waiting to buy the crib mattress and dresser after the shower. Grant closed his eyes. I leaned toward the phone. "Who filed the claim?" "I can't disclose details beyond what is available in your message center." "But I already know. I'm sorry." After the call, I opened my laptop. Grant sat beside me. "What are you doing?" "Making a folder." He didn't ask why. I created one on the desktop and named it Donna Brandon account. Then I started dragging in screenshots. Texts. Transfers. Receipts. Voicemails I had saved because some quiet, exhausted part of me always knew this day might come. At 9:47 p.m., my phone lit up. "Mom." I didn't answer. A voicemail appeared. Grant watched me press play. My mother's voice filled the bedroom, sweet as poison tea. "Natalie, you embarrassed yourself today? But I'm willing to forgive you if you stop this nonsense and come to the house tomorrow. Alone. We need to discuss what you owe this family." There was a pause. Then Brandon's voice in the background said, "Tell her she has 24 hours. The message ended. Grant looked at me. I saved the voicemail to the folder. Then I whispered, "Now we call a lawyer." The lawyer's name was Priya Shah, and she had the kind of voice that made panic feel inefficient. Grant found her through a coworker whose sister had dealt with financial abuse after a divorce. I almost didn't call because part of me kept whispering, "This is your mother. You don't hire a lawyer against your mother." Then I replayed the voicemail. "What you owe this family." I called. Priya agreed to a video consultation the next morning. I sat at our kitchen table in one of Grant's sweatshirts, swollen feet on a chair, laptop open, the evidence folder ready. Grant sat beside me with a notebook. Priya appeared on screen in a navy blazer, hair pulled back, expression calm but not soft. "Before we start," she said, "Natalie, are you safe?" The question made my eyes burn. "Yes," I said. "Physically." "That distinction matters." I told her everything. The joint account. My father's death. My mother asking to be added. The transfers. Brandon's emergencies. The baby shower. The freeze. Priya listened without interrupting, only asking dates and amounts. When I finished, she leaned closer to her camera. "I need to be very clear. If your mother is legally a joint owner, the bank may view the money as accessible to either of you. That complicates recovery." My stomach sank. "But," she continued, "filing a false unauthorized activity report to restrict access, especially if done to pressure you, is a different issue. The voicemail helps. So do the texts." Grant asked, "Can we get the account unfrozen?" "We can push. I'll draft a letter to the bank's legal department. We'll request preservation of records and provide evidence that the freeze is being used coercively. I also want you to file a police report." "A police report?" I repeated. Priya nodded. "Not because officers will solve it overnight, because documentation matters. If this escalates, you want a paper trail before the baby arrives." The baby. Every time someone said that, reality returned. There was a child coming into this mess. A tiny person who would depend on me to build walls I had never been brave enough to build for myself. After the call, I sat silently while Grant printed the bank statements. He finally said, "You don't have to protect them anymore." I know. But knowing and feeling were not the same. At noon, Elise came over with soup, compression socks, and the facial expression of a woman prepared to commit a felony on my behalf. "I'm not saying I'll slash tires," she announced, setting a grocery bag on the counter. "I'm saying pregnancy has made you too traceable, so I would handle logistics." For the first time in 24 hours, I laughed. Then she hugged me, carefully around my belly, and whispered, "I'm so sorry." That almost broke me, because sympathy from safe people feels different. It doesn't demand repayment. While Grant and Elise organized documents, I checked my phone. 6 missed calls from Mom, 3 from Brandon, 1 text from Kelsey. "Kelsey, please just talk to them. Brandon is furious, and your mom is spiraling." I stared at the words. Your mom is spiraling. Not, "Are you okay after being humiliated while pregnant?" Not, "I'm sorry." Just a request that I return to my assigned role, the absorber. I typed back, "I will communicate through my attorney." Almost instantly, dots appeared, then disappeared. Then Brandon called. I declined. He called again. Declined. Then a text came through. "Brandon, you think you're so smart? That account paid for Mom's house. Dad wanted us all taken care of. You don't get to run off with everything because Grant has you brainwashed." I took a screenshot. Another message. "Brandon, come tomorrow or this gets ugly." Screenshot. My hands were steadier now. At 3, Grant drove me to the police station. I felt ridiculous walking in with a folder and a pregnant belly, like I was overreacting to family drama. But Priya had coached me. Use facts, not feelings. So I did. The officer at the desk, a tired-looking man named Ruiz, listened while I explained. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't call it a civil matter immediately. He asked to hear the voicemail. When Brandon's voice said, "Tell her she has 24 hours, Officer Ruiz's eyebrows lifted. "That a threat?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "That's why I'm here." He took the report. I walked out with a case number. It felt like a small metal shield. That evening, Priya emailed the bank letter. Grant and I read it together. It was formal, sharp, and beautiful, in the way only legal language can be beautiful when someone has been trying to make you feel crazy. It used words like coercion, misrepresentation, financial exploitation, preservation of evidence. I slept for 4 hours straight that night. The next morning, my mother showed up at my house. No warning, no apology, just 3 hard knocks that made my whole body tense. Grant looked through the peephole and muttered, "Absolutely not." "Is Brandon with her?" "No, just her." I checked the baby monitor app out of habit, even though the nursery was empty, then opened my phone camera and started recording. Grant opened the door, but kept the chain on. Donna stood on our porch in a camel coat, holding a white gift bag with blue tissue paper. Her eyes went straight past Grant, searching for me. "I brought something for the baby," she said. Grant's voice was flat. "You need to leave. I'm not here for you." "No, you're here because your threats are now documented." Her expression flickered. I stepped into view, phone held low but recording. "Hi, Mom." She smiled sadly, performing for an audience that wasn't there. "Natalie, look at you. Hiding behind your husband and a camera." "I'm documenting contact." "You sound ridiculous. You sound familiar." That landed. Her eyes sharpened. She lifted the gift bag. "Can I at least give my grandson a present?" "My son isn't a bargaining chip." Her mouth twisted. "Your son? Interesting. You didn't make him alone." Grant said, "Donna." She ignored him. "You know, Natalie, I tried to spare you embarrassment. I really did. But if you force me, people will find out the truth." My pulse jumped. "What truth?" She leaned closer to the gap in the door. "That your father never trusted you either." For a moment I couldn't breathe. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out folded papers. "He left instructions," she said, "about the money, about the house, about you." My father had died suddenly of a stroke. There had been no dramatic bedside confession, no family meeting. My mother handled the estate because she said his will was simple and there was nothing for us to worry about. I had believed her. Grant held out his hand. "Give us copies." Donna laughed. "Oh no. If Natalie wants to know what her father really thought of her, she can come to my house. Alone." There it was again. Alone. My fear cooled into something harder. "No." Her eyes widened. "Excuse me? No. Anything you have can go to my attorney." "You ungrateful little—" She stopped herself, but too late. The mask cracked wide open. I lifted the phone slightly so she could see it. "Finish the sentence," I said. Her face went pale with fury. Then she dropped the gift bag on the porch. The tissue spilled sideways, revealing a tiny blue blanket. For one stupid second, my heart hurt. Then I saw the envelope taped to it. Grant did too. He crouched, picked up the envelope without opening the door, and read the front. "For Natalie." I stared at the photocopy until the numbers blurred. $18,000. 2 weeks after my father died. My name, my signature, not my handwriting. Grant took one look at my face and said, "You didn't do this." "No." "Say it again. I didn't do this." He nodded once like he was anchoring me to the floor. "Then it's evidence." My first instinct was still absurdly childish. I wanted to call my mother and ask why, as if there might be some explanation that didn't involve betrayal. As if she might suddenly become the kind of mother who heard pain in my voice and stopped. Instead, I sent a photo to Priya. She called within 7 minutes. "Do not contact your mother," she said immediately. "I wasn't going to." "You were thinking about it." I closed my eyes. "Maybe." "Don't. This is no longer just the frozen account. This may involve forgery, estate fraud, and identity misuse. I want the original or a certified copy of that withdrawal slip from the bank, if it exists. I also want your father's probate file. My mom said the will was simple. Then the file should be simple to get." That sentence sat in the air like a door opening. Grant was already reaching for his laptop. Priya continued, "Natalie, did you ever see the will?" "No." Mom said Dad left everything to her. "Did you sign anything after he died?" "I signed some forms she brought me. I was grieving. I didn't read them closely." Grant looked up sharply. Shame crawled up my neck. "I trusted her." Priya's voice softened slightly. "Trusting your mother is not a crime. Exploiting that trust may be." After the call, Grant found the county probate records online. My father's name appeared immediately. Mercer, Thomas Allen. My hands trembled as Grant clicked. There were docket entries, filings, notices, words I didn't understand. But one document made Grant go very still. "Nat. What?" He turned the laptop toward me. "Waiver of notice and consent to administration." My name was typed at the top. A signature beneath. Again, not mine. I felt the room tilt. "There are 2, Grant said quietly. "One for you, one for Brandon." I leaned closer. Brandon's signature looked like Brandon's. Mine looked like a stranger imitating me from memory. A cold thought slid through me. "What did I supposedly waive?" Grant read silently, then exhaled. "Your right to be formally notified of parts of the estate process. And possibly to contest some things." My throat tightened. Why would she need that if Dad left everything to her? Grant didn't answer. He didn't have to. We paid a small fee to download the will. It took 30 seconds. 30 seconds to dismantle 4 years of my mother's story. My father had not left everything to Donna. He left the house to her, to live in for the rest of her life. But after that, it was to be split between me and Brandon. He left his retirement beneficiary to my mother, yes. But he also left a separate investment account to be divided equally between his children. And there was a paragraph about me. My dad's words. For my daughter Natalie, whose steadiness has often held this family together more than she knows. I covered my mouth. Grant read it and went pale with anger. Not because of the money. Because my mother had stood on my porch that morning and said my father never trusted me. She had said it knowing he had written the opposite. I cried then. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just silently, with my hand over my mouth, because grief had found a new room inside me. Elise arrived 20 minutes later after one text from Grant. She read the paragraph and started crying too. That witch, she whispered. Elise. No. Pregnant or not, lawyer or not, I'm saying witch. I almost laughed. But then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown, you should have come alone. Attached was a photo. Our front porch. Taken from across the street. My blood turned to ice. Grant grabbed his keys and went to the window. No one's there now. Elise locked the back door. Another message came. Unknown. Mom gave you a chance. Don't blame us. I took screenshots, then called Officer Ruiz using the number on the police report. He told us to stay inside, save everything, and he would send a patrol car by. Grant wanted to drive to Brandon's house. Priya, when we called, told him if he did, she would personally reach through the phone and revoke his common sense. So we waited. Waiting is its own kind of torture. The patrol car came. The officer, Grant's hand found mine under the table. Marcus said, "Do not confront them. Let us work." But my family wasn't done confronting me. At 4:18 p.m., Kelsey called. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer on speaker. Her voice was shaking. Natalie? What is it? I can't be involved in this. In what? Silence. Then, very quietly, she said, Brandon told your mom he'd scare you into dropping it. I thought he was just talking. Grant went rigid. I pressed record on my phone with my other hand. Kelsey, where is he now? I don't know. He left an hour ago. With what? She started crying. Nat, he took Dad's old keyring. The one your mom kept. He said if you wanted documents so bad, he'd give you something to worry about. I stood too fast, and pain tightened across my lower belly. Grant caught my elbow. Sit. But then the doorbell camera chimed. Once? Twice. Grant opened the app. The video loaded. My brother stood on our porch, face red, breathing hard. In his right hand was a manila folder. In his left was a brick. Grant didn't move toward the door. That was what saved us. Old Grant might have opened it. Furious Grant wanted to. I could see it in his shoulders, in the way his hand curled into a fist at his side. But husband and father Grant looked at me, looked at my stomach, and chose the phone. He dialed 911. On the camera, Brandon lifted the brick. Natalie, he shouted through the door. You want family secrets. Open up. I sat frozen on the couch, one hand gripping Elise's, the other pressed to the hard curve of my belly. Grant spoke calmly to the dispatcher. My brother-in-law is on our porch with a brick. My wife is 7 months pregnant. We have prior threats documented. Brandon slammed the brick against the door. The sound cracked through the house like a gunshot. Elise whispered, Oh my God. He hit it again. The door held, but the small window beside it shattered. Glass sprayed across the entryway. Grant pulled me farther back, still on the phone. Police are on the way, he called out. Brandon shoved the manila folder through the broken side window, then leaned close enough that the camera caught spit at the corner of his mouth. You should have stayed quiet, he said. Mom gave you everything. Then he ran. The patrol car caught him 2 blocks away. I didn't see the arrest. I was in the kitchen by then, doubled over, breathing through a pain that wrapped around my back and squeezed. Grant's face went white. Hospital. Now. Elise grabbed my bag, even though it was only half packed. At labor and delivery, they monitored me for 6 hours. The contractions slowed. The baby stayed steady. My blood pressure came down only after a nurse with kind eyes put her hand over mine and said, "Whatever is happening out there, he's okay in here." I cried then. Not because I was weak. Because my son was still safe. While I lay in that hospital bed, Priya called Grant. The manila folder Brandon threw through our window contained originals. Bank slips. Estate papers. A copy of my father's will. And a handwritten note from my mother to Brandon that said, "If Natalie gets curious, remind her what happens when she turns on us." That sentence changed everything. Kelsey gave a statement the next morning. She admitted Brandon and my mother had talked for weeks about forcing me to come back in line. She said Donna filed the bank complaint after noticing I had moved most of my direct deposits away from the joint account. She said Brandon believed the remaining money belonged to him because Mom promised it. The bank lifted the freeze 12 days later. Not fast enough to feel merciful, but fast enough to prove my mother hadn't won. Priya helped us move every dollar into a new account at a different bank. Marcus petitioned to reopen my father's estate. A handwriting expert confirmed what I already knew in my bones. My signatures had been forged. The $18,000 withdrawal. The probate waiver. 2 other documents I had never seen. My mother denied it until the bank produced security footage from 4 years earlier, Donna at the counter, wearing her church pearls, sliding over paperwork with my name on it. Brandon tried to claim he was just upset when he came to our house with a brick. The doorbell camera disagreed. For months, everything moved slowly. Legal things do. Healing does too. Donna eventually took a plea deal. Fraud-related charges, probation, restitution, and a lien against the house my father had tried to protect for both his children. Brandon got probation too, plus anger management, a restraining order, and the permanent loss of the version of himself he thought the family would always excuse. My mother wrote me one letter, not an apology. A 4-page performance about betrayal, stress, widowhood, and how a daughter should never drag her mother through court. At the bottom she wrote, "When your son is born, you'll understand." I did understand, just not the way she meant. When my son was born 6 weeks later, after 19 hours of labor and 1 emergency scare that made Grant cry harder than I did, the nurse placed him on my chest. He was warm and furious and perfect. Tiny fists. Dark hair. A cry that sounded like he had arrived with opinions. We named him Thomas Ellis Hale. Thomas, for my father. Ellis for Elise, who sobbed so loudly in the waiting room that a nurse asked if she was family. Grant laughed and said, "She is now." My mother did not meet him. That was not revenge. It was protection. There were days I mourned the idea of her. The grandmother she could have been. The mother I kept hoping would appear if I explained myself clearly enough. Love was not supposed to freeze your bank account to teach you obedience. Love was not supposed to show up with a gift bag and a threat. 6 months later, the nursery was finally finished. Grant painted the walls a soft green. Elise's grandmother's quilt hung over the rocking chair. The dresser we bought after the bank released the money stood beneath the window, covered in tiny socks that never stayed paired. Above the crib, I framed a copy of the paragraph from my father's will. For my daughter Natalie, whose steadiness has often held this family together more than she knows. Sometimes during late-night feedings, I looked at those words and let myself believe them. One snowy evening, Thomas fell asleep against my shoulder, his cheek warm against my collarbone, his little hand resting open over my heart. Outside, the world was quiet and white. Inside, Grant was washing bottles in the kitchen, humming off-key. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. For a second, the old fear rose. Then I looked down at my son. I let the call ring until it stopped. I didn't check the voicemail. I just rocked my baby under my father's words, in a house where nobody had to earn tenderness, and watched the snow cover every footprint leading away from our door. If you've ever had to protect your peace from the people who were supposed to protect you, tell me in the comments. I read every one. If this story stayed with you, Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. Would you have walked away quietly? Or would you have made sure everyone knew the truth? And if you want more stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.